Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our language and culture subject from Universidad Nacional Abierta y a Distancia. My name is Cesar Augusto Rodriguez, and today I am going to interview an English teacher who is going to share with us his point of views related to the relationship between language and culture. So, Mr. Good evening, and thank you very much for attending to this interview. I would like to ask you before, um, given the questions, that you introduce yourself, please.
Okay, good evening. My name is Demian Avila. I am an English and literature teacher. Well, I've been working for about 15 years teaching children, teenagers, and adults. I have worked with the three ages, all these three ages.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Damian.
You're
And
welcome.
so now, as I told you before, I'm going to ask you some questions, and I would like that you share with us your point of views related to this interesting topic for us, for all people who are in the process of um, specializing in teaching and
Okay.
pedagogical issues. So our first question is this: uh, what do you think, or what do you think is the relationship? What do you think about the relationship between language and culture?
Well, I think culture has some aspects, some features, and language is one of them. Language is the vehicle to transmit the cultural elements from a society.
Okay, and what what is the influence? What do you think about the influence of culture in the process of foreign language acquisition?
Okay, I think uh, if we want to have a successful process in teaching a foreign language, we have to take into account all the cultural aspects from a society, from a group of people. Yes, it's not only communicate by communicating, but you have to take into account aspects like behavior of people in that place, like the way their families develop their relationships, the things they believe in, and so on. We have to involve all those things into this process.
Okay, Mr. Damien, and which cultural expressions do you know uh, countries or different countries have through language?
Well, as I said, the most important thing or tool to teach a foreign language and teaching and acquiring culture is to know how the other society behaves, especially how especially the relationships they have, to share their emotions, to share their beliefs, to communicate their ideas. Yes, the language they use daily, day by day, in their ordinary situations.
We were talking before that music as a possible expression of culture. Do you agree with me related to that? That music could be a possible expression, cultural expression.
Well, I think music is one of the most important uh, tools in teaching a foreign language, but also is good because it is the main part of a language, the main part of a culture. Sorry, um, and definitely music and lyrics um, are important to acquire the way the other community, the other society speaks, transmit their ideas.
Mm, why do you think it is important to have an oral tradition in a country?
Well, I think one of most important ways to transmit our background, our social background, is oral tradition. Yes, is the most efficient way to take things from one generation to another.
Okay. Mm, this is an interesting topic, an interesting issue for this topic. Do you think? What do you think about this? Do we teach language using culture, or do we teach culture through language?
Well, the ideal thing uh, would be to teach culture, the cultural aspects. We are talking about transmitting culture from one generation to the next generation, yes, and we should do that using language to transmit, to present, to teach uh, our cultural features. But what we are doing now is the opposite. We are teaching language through culture, where we are using different situations to teach language. Yes, to teach the structures that language has. But we should start to think in the opposite, to teach culture through language.
Okay. And finally, I suppose, or I'm quite sure that you have used in your classes different strategies or cultural strategies to teach language. Maybe could you give us, or could you share with us some examples about those strategies for teaching culture through language?
Well, it's very simple. It's only to teach, to find out different situations in different cultures that are exotic to to the the students, yes, to the learners. Those things that we don't have in our culture are very, very important, and are very motivated for them to learn how a culture, a far culture like Egypt or like Africa, their cultural expressions, the way they use in religion, the way they cook, for example, the way they treat animals or natural resources are important.
We had said before that a possible way, a possible strategy to teach culture, it's to compare. It's to compare two cultures at the same time, and maybe we can get the most important points or things or issues to enrich our own culture, isn't it?
We are always comparing our language, our mother language, with the language we are acquiring. It is an important point. Some authors say it is not important, but I am convinced that it's an important feature. How we in our country, in our culture, address to people in the transport system, in the school, in the restaurant, we are comparing, and with the other culture we are learning the language. We are comparing with the American culture, the Australian culture, the British culture, how they communicate their ideas in the same places, in the same situations, in the transportation system, in the cafeteria, in the restaurant, if it is formal or informal. Yes, we as Latin people are very informal to communicate things, but other cultures communicate differently.
Okay, Mr. Damian, I want to really thank you for your time to share your ideas, and I hope this interview can contribute to enrich our opinions and our thoughts and our studies related to language and culture.
Thank you very much for your interview. I hope I contribute with something.
Thank you again.